Welcome back to another episode of the Next Is Now podcast. This is Max Feldman. Got a big episode coming up today, so I'm looking forward to getting into it. First, I'm going to have Travis Graff and Colby Jacobino hopping on here. We're going to be talking some more about USA Basketball's junior national team. U18 roster headed to Argentina next week for the AmeriCup qualifiers. Talk about what that roster looks like and a little bit of a breakdown there. Next, we'll get into some rankings movers over this last month or so in the spring, guys who stood out during the spring live periods. And we'll put a little bit of a bigger focus on 2025s there who are starting to move the needle. Lastly, I'll have Jameer Wallace from Trainman Elite, Midwest Spring Circuit champions from this past weekend. We're going to be talking some more about the spring circuit there, the viral game winner, and a whole lot more. Look forward to getting into it. Colby, Travis, welcome on. Appreciate you guys taking the time. So today, like I said, we're going to start here talking about USA Basketball Junior National Team. U18 roster headed to Argentina for next week's AmeriCup qualifiers. The camp this past weekend, the training camp, was 29 total guys. That included 5 2024s, 21 2025s, and then 3 2026s were also on tap. So essentially that group is built around the 2006 birth year. So 29 total guys out there in Colorado Springs for that. Now we've got a roster of 12 guys. So I'll go to you guys here. Looking at the roster, what were some of the first things that stood out?
To me, the backcourt sticks out. You got Darius Acuff, Mike L. Brown, Jasper Johnson, Trey McKinney, Jeremiah Fears. Like, you got guys that can get you a bucket in a lot of different ways. I'm interested to see how they mesh, but they have guys that you can put out there. Like, any of them get 20 points any given night in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of the same opinions in regards to that, Trav. I think, and you kind of hinted at it, but I was just kind of surprised that they didn't get at least one like pure point guard in this thing. You know what I mean? Not to say that it's going to put, USA behind an 8-ball in this competition, but I'm just very curious to see who emerges as more of like the table setter, pace dictator, and can kind of, if they're getting pushed to the limit, really slow that game down and act as a coach on the floor. I tend to side with Mikael Brown for that. But, as we've seen guys like Darius Acuff, Jasper Johnson, Trey McKinney, like these guys can, as you said, try to put the ball in the bucket. And if they're able to overwhelm teams early on, and I think with a combination of the wings that they have, with the size and the length, maybe they throw some, full court pressure, speed teams up. It could definitely play in their favor. Kind of brings me to the wings as well. Before I pass it back to either Max or Trav, I feel like they did a really good job just filling for making more of an offensive heavy backcourt. They got a lot of good connecting pieces on the wings. Guys who are low maintenance, they're not afraid to go get dirty and go get the boards, or just, they can make an impact without having the ball in their hands. I think one that maybe doesn't fit that mold quite yet is '8th. I think he's more of like an offensive driven wing. But the rest of those guys, man, I think they fit perfectly with the type of backcourt that, they selected.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a group that was structured around the backcourt, just like firepower. It seems like the other two groups are like wings and bigs specifically, like they diversified skill sets, I feel like, very well. Each guy kind of does their own things, like you talked about. On the wing, like Shelton Henderson and Darian Reed specifically are just going to be unstoppable in a FIBA setting like this, playing against less physical, less athletic guys. And then the front court too, like Morez Johnson, Pat and Gongba, like no one's really going to be able to match that size. And I think, like you said, the Mikael Brown stuck out to me specifically in terms of just like opportunity to be a true point guard, like facilitator here. They definitely will look to pressure full court like they do in these types of settings. So I think that'll be a big piece of it. Like Jasper, Darius Acuff, Jeremiah Fears will have a big chance to kind of leave their mark defensively. But it is a very, very interesting group.
You talked about low maintenance wings. I love how low maintenance the bigs are as well. Pat and Gongba, Morez Johnson, Daniel Jacobson, like any of those guys, like you said, their skill sets complement each other as well. But any of those guys in the FIBA setting can get 10 and 10 without a play being drawn up for them, essentially. I
Yeah.
think that this USA team with the wings that you have with Shelton Henderson, you got Darion Reed. Like I think USA is gonna control the boards and just let the guards rock out. And that makes sense if you, like you said, Max, if they purposefully built the roster around the backcourt firepower.
I think too, Max, because I'm gonna let you go on Jacobson here when I wrap up the front court, but just to go with Ngangba and a guy like Morez Johnson, you have a good mix up there too because obviously Johnson's a guy who's gonna be able to control the glass, play like a bull in a china shop, bring the physicality. That's not to say Ngangba isn't gonna do that, but he brings more of the IQ and feel both from the block and if you play him out on the perimeter for dribble handoffs or just ball screens and those short roll actions. And then I think what could really emerge here is with other teams really trying to stop the scoring guards in the backcourt that we just spoke about. I'm hoping they put Ngangba in a little bit of pick and pop situations because with time and space he can knock down threes and that'll just further supply some floor spacing that'll come in handy for guys like Acuff and McKinney and Johnson, these guys who can really fill it up.
Yeah, I think it's a really good mix of guys that can get downhill, and then you throw a guy like Nate Men out there when he does get minutes, and it's a 6'9", 6'10" guy stretching the floor, creating in space. And then Daniel Jacobson too, I think fits the bill too. It's like high level rim protector and now starting to space the floor pretty effectively. And I think a guy too that's been talked about a ton over the last week, obviously, was a late pickup for Purdue and kind of like took on a high major recruitment really late in the process. I think it came down to Wisconsin and Purdue. And I think a guy that quietly had a really, really good season at Brewster too, just been a late bloomer as a big that's legit 7'3", still really skinny. He's going to fill out well, but I think it's going to be an interesting setting for him too. A guy that I think we might not see a ton of at Purdue next year, but I think pops up in a year or two and it's adds strength is going to be a real weapon in terms of spacing the floor, being able to make some decisions. And I think the biggest thing for him is that he's grown a whole lot tougher. So I'm excited to kind of see that development. But you put him next to Morez Johnson, Pat Ngangba, he's going to have plenty of opportunity to do a bunch of different things on the perimeter as well.
The next Zach Edey?
Very different, completely different than Zach Edey. And I know Zach Edey was very skinny coming out of IMG as well, but I think it's a completely different player. But still, Matt Painter's got a monster on the way. He's going to develop into a real dude for sure.
Now, Max, I'm going to give you the floor on this because you're a humble guy and don't like to toot your own horn a lot. But there's been a lot of talk about people ranking Daniel Jacobson this week, and you've been on that train for months now. Where have we had him at in the rankings? That was all you're doing.
Yeah, he's been inside the top 100 for a minute. I think he was right outside. I think he jumped in early in the season after he carved out more of an opportunity at Brewster, was on the floor and defended the rim extremely well. And then he didn't honestly even do that much during the high school season from perimeter, but just the shot blocking. And I think the progression, he kept getting stronger, kept getting bigger and just more aggressive. And I think that showed through in the high school season that got him into the top 100. And he's kind of been floating between 85 and 100 for a while now. But I think just like people have talked about throughout the week, I think it wouldn't be a surprise to look back in 3 years and he's like a clear-cut top 50 guy in this class. Keeps getting better and he's going to continue to get stronger. So yeah, he's been a fun one to track. My next question on this roster would be a potential weakness. I feel like throughout that first go around there, we just talked about a lot about how they might dominate, and they still definitely might get away from this America Cup next week. Very dominant, winning each game by 30 plus. But what do you think is go back to Colby here? What do you think is a potential weakness for them?
I think just again something that we hit on in the first segment there. If they face a team with very controlled, mature guards who can, battle adversity and a team that, is connected I would say, on a string, to say the least, defensively, to make those couple rotations. Because, I mean, let's face it, like, there probably aren't going to be a lot of teams that can keep these guards in front of them on a consistent basis. However, just, no matter where you play basketball, it's a game of runs. And I just want to be sure. I would say if we were a team, if I had a team that was going against them, we want these guards to get very excited and launch these threes and keep the pace to our control, which is slower in a half court setting. Make them play long possessions on the defensive side, but we have to take advantage when these guards aren't making shots, because I think that's just where the opening is, and that's not to say the guards are the weak spot. I just think it's, in a sense, like feast or famine in that sense. And trust me, if they're hitting shots, nobody's sticking with them. But I don't know if they have the exact scoring firepower in the wings and the front court to carry the load if the guards are really not connecting and, as Travis mentioned, like really meshing together and playing well off one another.
Totally.
Yeah, Colby hit it on the head there. Like he said before, I just think that I want to see one of these guards turn into a true floor general of this team. And then out of the Nate Mint and Nick Kamania duo, I want to see one of those guys become more, because I think with this backcourt, it's going to be easy for those guys to become just spot up shooters and reap the benefits of their driving ability and whatnot. But I'd like to see one of them be able to take over a couple games as well, because I have a feeling a lot of these guards in this backcourt are streaky shooters, and I think they're going to have off games, and you're going to have to put the ball in the wings' hands. I want to see how that looks.
And also, Max, you probably know about this more than me and Trav right off the rip here, especially. But if there's a really skilled, toolsy, like stretch five type, like that might give him some issues too. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that these bigs can't defend, but if you have a guy who can grab and go and kind of play off the bounce and make things happen off the live dribble, that could give him some issues too. But that also accounts for them kicking the ball and having to make shots. So a lot of different wrinkles with this team.
Yeah, so there's two groups. Group A is Venezuela, Canada, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Group B is Argentina, Belize, Brazil, USA. So, I mean, Canada will have a good roster, but in general, it's one of those early summer events, qualifier type things where they should be fine. Like they should be fine coming away and qualifying. But I think my potential weakness was kind of a mix of what both you guys said. I think adjusting to the FIBA stuff is a real thing, and we've seen halves where guys just go cold, whether it be because of the new basketball itself, whether because of the court, the new rules, just the pace that other teams are playing. And I think there's a bunch of unique dynamics to FIBA. And I think the potential worry could be that some of your better offensive guys here are definitely your weaker defenders. So if you try to defend, you're trying to get your defensive guys on the court. Do you have struggle scoring the ball? So I think that part will be interesting. But like I said, I think they're going to be just fine coming away from here. My last point on USA, they got down to 18 before they got to 12. The 6 guys that were cut were Jane Quaintance, Nick Lewis, Malachi Moreno, Mozzie Mosley, Sadiq White, and Caleb Wilson. Any of those guys surprising?
Not with the way that the team, I mean, you could nitpick different things about like certain players over the players that made the roster, but I like the way that the roster's constructed right now. I think that it'll be a good showing for USA this summer. I know we've been talking about some potential negatives, but I think that this roster is going to win the whole thing pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I had to nitpick, and again, who do you cut here? But I would have liked to see Jaden Quaintance make it, just from a standpoint of he's young. He's in the USA windmill, if you will, and just to watch him grow, kind of gives us a little bit of a glimpse too of how he would handle, as you mentioned, Max, the style of play, the different rules and whatnot. I think he would thrive in that sort of setting, with how he plays. But you can't really make any rash arguments in terms of who should have made it. I don't even know within that group that you just named, Max, again, like if there is a true point guard that you could have could have chosen just to give you a little bit of security in that sense. So
I'll
going
say,
all in.
I'll
to get
say
Buck-
again, and we've talked about it before, there aren't really many true point guards here.
No,
That's
you're
part
right.
of the problem.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Quaintance was the first one that came to mind for me. I think probably how well Daniel Jacobson played from everything that we've heard kind of made it a little bit of an uphill battle, just because Merez Johnson, Patrick, and Gongbar are just a little bit more physically mature. They're older than Quaintance. So I think that probably made it a little bit of an uphill battle. But besides that, I think it came together pretty well, just from the look at it. But yeah, moving on to rankings movers. Before we get into some trending names that are looking like risers, guys who popped during the live period, I wanted to talk about just specifically 2025s from our last rankings update. So I think first point of discussion before we get into a bunch of other guys is our movement in the top 10. So last year around the same time, I think we made some big moves in the class of 2024. That wound up, I think, aging pretty well, just with how the industry moved over the following 3 or 4 months. And I feel the same way about a few of these. So we'll go to Travis here. What stands out for you in how the top 10 in 2025 has evolved over the last few months?
I think Hoops made a statement of putting Will Riley in the top 5. I think you're going to see a lot of people. I don't know if anybody else will be bold enough to put him in the top 5, but I think you'll see him inching closer and closer, like top 6, 7, whatever. He's just been putting up incredible scoring numbers on high volume. Had a dud this weekend that we talked about. Finally, he was due for one because he's been scoring so efficient on high volume all year, just becoming better at reading the floor. His floor game has gotten a lot better over the past year on the ball. 6'8", 6'9", got all the tools in the world. I want to see him become a better defender, but offensively, there's not many people better than him in the country.
Yeah, I think through and through, man. I don't know how you guys feel, so I'm just speaking for myself here, but especially through the top 7, 8, feel very comfortable about these guys in terms of a long-term view. Just like as potential pros. There's just I feel like there's a lot of tangibles that there weren't in the 2024 class. There's a lot more questionable, like, well, A, B, and C have to happen in order for D to be the outcome. I think there's a lot more like surefire guys here. As Trav mentioned, Will Riley, we have him third. I think he's a prototypical NBA type of wing that we see in today's game, and the way that he scores and his approach translates really well. And then a guy that we just got done talking about over here from my area, 𝘍evelopment, we threw him in our top 5 at number 5. And I think for good reason. The flashes have become a lot more common and regular. And it's not just him getting to his spots, in a smooth manner. It's him taking the ball and putting it on somebody's head and putting him in the rim. And I think that was an aspect of his game that you saw every now and again that's becoming much more, happening much more on a regular basis. So I think all in all, yes, we did take we've taken some risks, if you will, but in my opinion, the long-term risks are not as what, it may seem.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it was interesting. I think last year we had a bunch of guys jump into the top 10 in this kind of bigger push in the spring, but between the spring and summer. We actually didn't have anyone jump in. Kingston Flemings is definitely the closest guy, and I think is a good argument to get in there. But it was more so just movement inside the top 10. Like you guys said with Will Riley, and I think we talk about all the time with evaluation and how much we're watching these guys. It's like once our notes leaving games on guys are pretty similar for a certain amount of time, that kind of just becomes what they are. And I think that's been the big thing with Will Riley. Like he continues to just hit shots at a really high level, create, I think, like the amount of different coverages he dealt with while he was at Phelps and kind of their main guy, I think has been super beneficial for him. Still has the ball in his hands a ton with UPlay, but has really grown as a decision maker. I think it's really easy to look at the shot making and be like, yeah, he's playing at a high level. But I do think the game is starting to slow down. Like you said, Travis over the weekend definitely had a down game, but with how efficient he's been shooting and what kind of shots they're coming on, I think he was due for one like that. But I think it's tracking at a really, really high level. He's definitely obviously got an interesting few months ahead of him with some reclassification buzz coming up. And then with 𝘿evelopment, obviously the other big one, I think he jumped up from 9 to 5. And different than Will Riley, I think it's just been over the last few months. He's just, you can see it coming together. A guy was later to the game than most of these guys. So I think that's kind of to be expected in terms of his maturation process, but playing at a really high level, obviously scouts are going to be attracted to this guy really quickly with how well he moves his feet, his size, his ability to shoot the ball, create a little bit. Now, like you said, Colby, playing with a little bit of power and aggression. So he's been a really fun one to watch. Moving into some other guys, we got kind of a random group of guys that I put together from our risers list. First one, I'll go to Travis here with Chris Senack, a guy that we've been watching for a while. He jumped up, I want to say it was after that USAB mini camp a while ago. He jumped up from like 55, 60 to our top 20. We got him now at 14th overall. What have you seen from Chris lately?
He's been impressive in every viewing that I've seen this year. Even if he doesn't produce, it just like the potential, the tools are just jaw dropping. It's one of those guys you could look back 5 years from now and he could arguably be the best player, or at least top 5 in the class. And like wouldn't bat an eye at it. He's got the size, plays on ball a lot, shot making. I'd like to see him do a little bit more around the rim. Likes to flow down the perimeter a lot, but it's because he can do that. Whereas a lot of people his size aren't able to do so. But he's a guy that if you're just looking at tools, upward trajectory, what he could be, like he's one of the top guys in this class, bar none.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting one too, where it's like when you're watching guys so early, tools obviously aren't really that hard to like, doesn't take all too much work to see the tools. But I think with Senack specifically, it was like last year, he was just a wildly impactful defender. He can fly around. I think he's got potential to be the best defender in this class long term with just how well he moves at 6'10". He's aggressive, and I think it's just been for him slowing the game down and learning how to play at a really high level. And I think we've seen incremental growth for him. So I think, yeah, upside wise, he makes sense for us as a top 15 guy. Another guy that's new to our top 25, Braylon Mullins from Indiana Elite. Going through this process, I kept looking at all of these the rankings inside the top 25. I'm like, I don't want to get too excited with how well Braylon Mullins is playing, but I think there's a chance he could wind up being even higher than this in a month or two. So Colby, I don't know if you have his numbers in front of you. What have you seen from Braylon Mullins from far here?
Yeah, I mean, well, what I've seen is a guy who brings very good size at 6'6". He's an elite outside shooter, and as the numbers would reflect, over 44% on 7.8 attempts, and that's in 3 SSB play. But as we say here in pretty much every podcast we do, guys, my biggest thing is translating to winning. At a very high level. And, not only that, but he's not just a guy who's going to shoot the cover off the ball. He's developing, I think, as a shot creator as well, with more regularity. He's got good athleticism where he can definitely put one on your head if he catches you sleeping. And I think just overall, he's a really, really good college prospect that's going to have a really big impact at the highest of levels of college basketball, just because we've seen guys like him with that makeup and those strengths, really succeed in that sense. So I think the move is great. And as you said, Max, like if it continues to translate to winning and he keeps shooting at this insane clip, I mean, he might even be, due for another bump here in the next update.
Yeah, I think we've seen some bigger offers come in. I think Kansas offered, he's got a ton of offers over the last few weeks, but I think he's very much being monitored by the highest of high blue bloods because of the way he's playing. And I think the shooting speaks for itself, obviously shooting the hell out of it right now, but he's also just wildly competitive and really knows how to play. I think he's a really good defender. He's still super skinny. I think he's going to fill that over these next few years, but just really knows how to play. He's super smart, like sees things before they happen. So I think that's going to scale up well. And I think I'm skipping over a guy here because
real quick, Max, on Mullins, I would argue he's had the most impressive added offers since May. He's added Kansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. I don't think anybody else in the country has added 4 offers of those calibers.
Yeah, and I know like UConn, a few other massive programs are starting to monitor him and start to watch him. So I think if he continues to play and continues to be as consistent as he's been on one of the best teams in 3SSB over this course of the spring, I think he's going to continue to gain more traction. Guy in a similar vein, very different player, but another 3SSB guy, one of my favorite guys over the last year is 𝘼aximizing. Pulling it up real quick, I got it right here. Similar to Mullins, shooting 44.7% from three on 10.3 attempts per game from deep through 3SSB games. So like doesn't take much breaking down there, just an elite shooter, and does it in so many different ways. And I think doesn't have the most traditional frame, body, things like that, but I think it's a thing that's going to get over evaluated, whether it's like, is he an on-ball guy, off-ball guy? It's like, I've seen him a lot. He can do both. He's one of the most competitive kids in the country, starting to defend at a really high level. One of the youngest kids in the class too, so I think he's going to continue to fill out and just add more and more over the course of the next few years. But winning games, producing at a high level, he's a guy that jumped into our top 30, and I would be surprised if he doesn't continue to rise across the industry because he just keeps getting better. And I think the upside with him, once you watch a game or two, is super, super clear. So I don't know if you guys seen him a ton, but I had to throw him in there.
Yeah, no, I've been keeping tabs on him from afar too, Max. And just my biggest thing was he was a name that I think not many people knew about prior. And then once the spotlight really got on him, the efficiency didn't change.
Yeah.
Maybe guys, especially a guard with the ball in his hand, might tend to think a little bit more, when the spotlight is on or when those high majors start, sitting courtside watching your game, is this a good shot or not? He just continues to play freely, and you can just tell that that's his game and that's his makeup.
Yeah, I think that's the tricky thing with a lot of this early spring stuff too, is it's like you watch a session or two and guys will kind of like break out and have a good session. And then the next session they'll shoot like 31% and put up 6 points a game. And it's like he maybe just had a great session, but this has been like a full year now of 𝘼aximizing doing this. So I think that gave us the confidence to get him into the top 30. And I wouldn't be a surprise to, similar to Mullins, just look up in a few months and see him a bit higher here. Next
I will
guy.
say this about Bateman too, is he's added offers from West Virginia, Virginia Tech, and DePaul over the past month. And there's been, I would say, 7 or 8 other high majors that have talked to me about getting in the race for him. So I think his recruitment is really going to start to pick up and match the ranking that we have him at now.
No doubt. Some quick hit guys. First one, are another guy new into the top 30 is London Jamison. Now got him at 26 overall, and we've talked a ton off air about him. So I'll give you guys the space there to talk about London. He's been playing at a high level for a few months now.
To me, it's just there's not many guys in the country that have his shot making ability, his frame, his size. Added a Georgetown offer yesterday. He's been shooting efficiently in every viewing that I've seen. Over the past, like every time he's one of those players, like every time I watched him over the past 2 years, he's produced at a high level. So I think he needs me to watch every single game.
Yep. I mean, Trav addressed it. I think when he's hitting shots, he's at his most valuable. The thing that sticks out to me with him at 6'8", when his shot isn't dropping, he's still going to get after it on the defensive end. And a lot of times you see people allow, missing shots to impact their effort on the other end of the floor. Not the case with Jamison.
He's a solid rebounder too, even when the shots aren't falling.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing, like you guys said, just the overall aggression. Like he's just playing with a ton of confidence and a ton of assertiveness. Over the last few years, it's been easy to see the tools. You could see he shot a little bit, had some touch, but now it's like he's becoming a real winning player and he's impacting the game in a ton of ways. And I think another guy that wouldn't be surprised to see like some big schools get in the mix for him as this class kind of plays out and schools start to focus on 2025 into these summer live periods. Colby, Ryan Crotty, definitely wasn't a one session fluke. What do you think?
No, man, blew up in session 2. There was buzz around him. I was aware of him prior to session 2, and I knew he always, he had a chip to him. But that came in, that was on full display in Atlanta. And since then, he's done nothing but just back the high thinking that the industry has about him. We have him, I believe, at 53 right now, averaging 13.8 points per game, an elite shooter in pretty much every sense. He can do it off the move, coming off pin downs, off kickouts. But he's another guy who, you might categorize as a shooter, but where I'm higher on him is that because he can bring a little bit of sense of a flair and high IQ as a passer that may go unnoticed. And he also, does his diligence on the boards for being a off-ball guard, shooter, spot-up shooter. I think he's been a huge piece to Boo Williams' success this season. You sit back and you imagine this roster without him, and the explosive games that he's had. I don't think they, come close to the 9 games that they've won so far. And again, just to touch on, like, he's more capable than just a spot up guy. He brings a competitive nature to the defensive end. He's not the most athletic kid on the floor, but he's going to bring fight, and he's going to, he's not going to hesitate to dive on the floor. I've mentioned this, in previous pods, but like, he is pretty close to what I think Cam Spencer was in high school. But obviously, like, he just has no conscience. I've seen him miss a shot. His team gets offense rebound, kick it right back out to him. He's going to shoot it again if he's open. If he misses that one, the same thing occurs. He's letting it go again. So, unwavering confidence and just a really fun player to watch.
Yeah, I didn't think about it till now that you say that, but one thing that popped to me watching him in Indy was that he just felt like a magnet off the ball. And I think that same effect with Cam Spencer, where I don't know if it's a combination of like his just toughness, his moxie, like the confidence guys around him have in him, or how smart he is off ball, but like he plays primarily off ball and he always finds a way to like be in the right spots. So I think that's a really interesting thing to track with him. Obviously, we're pretty high on him with 53. Won't be a surprise to see him continue rising if he continues to shoot the hell out of it. A few other guys we'll mention here. Zach Foster is a guy that jumped into our top 60, playing with Atlanta Celtics and 3SSB. Had a quietly great summer last year with them, and has kind of continued to put the pieces together. Just can really create, can really score it. Younger brother of now Xavier guard transfer from Furman, Marcus Foster. So a guy that I think is going to really continue to rise throughout the industry, and see his recruitment bump up throughout the summer. Travis, quickly, Winners Grady. What have you seen from him recently?
I've just seen confidence from him. Obviously playing alongside AJ DeBonsa, Tyron Stokes, you're kind of put in a box because those two are super ball dominant. He's doing more than he's shown in the past year on the ball himself. This grassroots season, he's able to get to his spots well, showing his athleticism, knocking down shots off the catch and off the bounce. So it's been a great couple months for his stock, honestly.
Yeah, definitely playing at a really high level right now. Just looked real quick. He's shooting 48% uncontested jumpers with Jalen Green Elite, which is super high level. I think it's 91st percentile. So high level stuff for him. Obviously been a great opportunity for him to kind of be able to play with the ball in his hands a little bit more. And I think he's shown some big moments with them. I'll go back to you, Travis, here with Isaiah Dennis. You've been talking about him since early spring. What do you think there?
He's been arguably my top stock riser of all of the EYBL. Quick athletic guard has been shooting the hell out of the ball recently, on high volume. I think he's gonna end up being a streaky shooter, but he's been on the money so far this EYBL season. That's another guy that has had a lot of Power Fives texting me. I had one Power Five text me, is like, "Hey, you need to stop tweeting about him because we don't need everybody to know how good he actually is." And he's gotten offers from Pittsburgh, Ohio State, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Florida, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State over the past 2 weeks. So everybody's starting to catch on board on the college coach part of things.
Yeah, upside jumps off the page with him for sure. So I'm an Indy, and I think it wound up being just a down overall weekend in terms of shooting the ball, but it was clear to see his athletic ability. Definitely a guy that's
It's 5'2", like combo guard. So he's very comfortable playing on the ball. I think he's more of a 2 at the next level, but he's very comfortable with the ball in his hands running the offense.
Yeah, great size, great first step. I think he's gonna fill out well, and you can tell like he's got some big time scoring instincts. A guy that, let's see, where did he jump to? He jumped to 81st overall. I think he's definitely going to be the guy that moves closer towards top 60, top 50 if he continues to put together sessions like he did in Kansas City. Last guy I'll mention here before we get out of here, Mason Blackwood. No, we've seen a bunch of him over the last year. I think just to me, the more I watch him, like a guy that just college coaches are going to absolutely love. He's comfortable with the ball. He can really guard. Starting to shoot it with more efficiency. And I think just there's been an overall confidence and aggression this year from him with that City Rocks team that I think in general is one of the most fun teams to watch in EYBL. Like they're not super highly touted, but they're super cohesive. They really know how each other play. And I think they're really, really tough. So let's see, Mason jumped to 98th. I think a guy too, like the more we hear from college coaches on him, I think the more confidence it gives us to be like, this is a guy that we should probably be a little bit higher on because everyone kind of wants him.
Yeah, he's another guy too that, like you said, he's been shooting it more efficiently, but even whenever the shots aren't falling, I love watching him. Like he's been efficient on drives. He loves to cut back door. He's always moving, and just has impact defensively as well. Another guy that just the shot doesn't have to be falling for him to have an impact.
No doubt. That's all I got. Appreciate you guys hopping on. We'll be back on soon. All right, Jameer, appreciate you hopping on. Before we talk a little bit about the game winner, I wanted to talk about the spring circuit as a whole. Your Treyman Elite team was pretty dominant down the stretch here these last few months. So what was that experience like for you?
It was a great feeling playing another team with those players, be a great team, play team ball. Missed one of our key pieces, but we pulled through these few months.
No doubt. So let's talk your game. For someone who's never seen you play before, how would you describe yourself as a player?
Yeah, as a player,
Yeah.
I would say I'm more of like a facilitator. Can get the ball, can score anytime, like a LeBron.
I was about to say, that's my next question. Who are some guys you like to watch film on, model your game after?
Kevin Durant, mainly.
No one else? Anyone in high school, college, anything like that?
Nah, not really.
Okay. Big question here. Obviously, the last one I got for you is let's talk the game winner. We see the final shot, a sideline out of bounds with a few seconds left. You're coming down towards the sideline. You've got 6'9" Eric Dampier flying at you, but you rise up with confidence and let it fire over the top. So break down the situation, time and score, and tell me what you were feeling in that moment.
Score was like 51-50. They hit like a free throw. So then the coach called a timeout. I see him drawing out the play. I had a feeling it was going to me, but I didn't know for sure. And then he said, I come out the screen and catch it. So like in my head, I'm like, I knew I got to hit this. Caught it, let it fly.
How many seconds were on the clock there?
It's like three seconds.
And has shooting the ball been something you've always really been confident in, or is something that's kind of come along steadily?
Come along step, bro.
Okay. I got you. That's big time. That's all I got. Appreciate you taking the time to take a few minutes to hop on here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.